Just a quick update on the key for the Gladiator. Once it's disassembled, if you've taken these torque screws out, this pin that goes through this spring here to make the key actually spin out doesn't just go straight back down on. This little teeny groove there, you can barely see it. I'll try and point it out as well as I can. It's on the outward facing side of the spring, has to line up with that little tongue of the spring. But more than that, it actually has to add spring tension to it first. So you actually have to put the peg in the spring, line up the little hole, and actually do a counterclockwise rotation to compress the spring before you seat the actual plastic facing on. I'll just quickly tighten this down so you can see what that does, essentially. I'm actually trying to line this up looking through the camera lens and rather not my eyes here. So this key tucks in and clicks, and then it flings back out just like that. And if I didn't do that spiral and wind it back up, the key will act very limp. It'll pop up to about here, but then it doesn't have the gusto to fling outward. So if you do disassemble this key, make sure you counterclockwise recoil that spring with that notched facing of this before you put it back together, or else the key won't pop back out properly. I also found out that if you push this facing side of the key against the push to start button on the vehicle, it will still work even with the battery out or dead, as this does have an RFID function that can be used as a bypass to start the vehicle, so if you are stuck. Nonetheless, that still doesn't nullify the fact that this should have been waterproofed from the get-go, and as you can see, I believe, and I would love to see a bunch of people post up pictures. I'm probably going to go on a couple of the off-road forums and ask people to post pictures of their key fob, because when looking up videos of this, I actually found a lot of the pictures that I had seen once this key is assembled still have from the factory this gap wider than it should be. And I think it's a manufacturing error in the mold for this plastic seal. And it leaves this little extra edge right there that causes it to bunch up and it won't sit properly. So I'm going to cut that out with a razor blade very meticulously and see if I can actually get the facing to seat properly. Now I've completely cleaned the inside of it with alcohol and cleaned it out with a rag. It was actually really nasty inside there. There's tons of Q-tips that are covered in little coffee bits, just all in the inner workings of this. Now I've let it dry out for about a day, and then once I re-screw it all back together, hopefully get this seal working, I'm going to leave the back off of it and let it dry out a little bit longer. I'll put the battery back in and then test it with the vehicle. I do believe it will work, but let's see. So I just took it apart one more time because this screw, once it was tightened down, would actually pin this a little too much. So I found that when I removed this back, let the spring uncoil again, putting it back on and then winding it 2 full turns. So you're holding this piece and the back apart from each other, putting them together and then rotating the back counterclockwise relative to the front. You make 1 and then a second full rotation, and then with that spring in there, compress it and then put these bolts down. It's a little bit tricky to do, but it's not bad, but it gives the key the full flick out that it had when it first started. So 2 rotations seems to be the magic trick to give it back what it wanted. I did trim this little tiny piece of the gasket out that was standing up on this edge. It didn't seem to make the back plate fit any better, unfortunately. This is just really poor manufacturing quality. It's awful. It's absolutely pathetic. So whoever's in charge of quality control and engineering with an endpoint of bad quality control is, pathetic at the dollar rate and the industry that they're in. If you were hired to work at Chrysler, Fiat, whatever, and you designed this and this is what came out, shame on you. You have created pretty much trash. So shame on Chrysler yet again. But yeah, don't forget to recoil that spring if you do pop out those little torque screws. And also, if anyone has figured out a fix to get that to lay flush, I'd love to know about it. I think I'm actually going to try and really just compress it really hard and see if it clips into place. The clips inside don't actually even meet their endpoint because the space in between is so filled with that gasket. But But yeah, if anyone has any information on these things, I'd love to hear your review of the same product. Leave a comment down below, and I hope this helped you rebuild your key if you didn't have your key kicking out the same way as it was when you took it apart.